My Blue Blitz deck is a simple but very effective aggro swarm deck. It puts extreme pressure on the early game with lots of small units that buff themselves easily. This deck is also very beginner friendly because you'll be mostly opening games as strong as possible despite your opponents. Note, if you went for RDU's Gnaeus creator deck instead of the Freerolls, the good news is that this build is very similar to mine, so the guide applies there as well. My version of the deck has Wong and Cerulean Hunter Kalair, while RDU's has Astal's Glaive. Both are great choices. Despite the beginner-friendly nature of this deck though, there is still skill required to do well in parallel, so let's break down how to best pilot the Blue Blitz. Gnaeus always wants to go first, and when you do, your opponents will struggle to keep up. Let's start by looking at our Paragon. His active ability reads, on attack, up to 3 other friendly units have +1/+2 this turn. It's quite useful, but we play Gnaeus primarily for his passive. At the end of your turn, if a friendly unit dealt combat damage and survived, that unit gains +1/+1. Combat damage is dealt when attacking. Now going first, you generally are going to want to open with Velarusi Striker. It's our best 1-cost unit, but we'll take any 1-drop to start the game. Opponents only have PS8 that can immediately answer Velarusi Striker. Otherwise, you get to attack first and it becomes a 3/3 by turn 2. Some of our other 1-drops are a little bit easier to handle because they have only 1 health. On turn 2, you typically want to go wide with 2 units or more, but it doesn't always have to be 2 1-drops to accomplish that. Cunning Scipion, for example, creates a 1/1 at the end of your turn, so it's effectively 2 units. Velarusi Standard Bearer plus 1 or more Tabula Rasas will work great here as well. Go wide. Convergent Salvatorum is a nice option on turn 2 because she has 4 health and is quite difficult to remove, so she's likely going to attack and get buffed on turn 3. Tabula Rasa pro tip: never bank a tabby, ever. It ruins their usefulness quite a lot. That's because when you play Tabula for 0, which you will often do, it will never have anything to copy unless you've made the mistake of banking a tabby first. That's because it changes to whatever it copies after it triggers buffs. So for example, if Velarusi Standard Bearer is on the board and you play Tabula Rasa for 0, it'll buff to a 1/2 unit. However, then it copies the banked tabula and it goes back to 0/1. Same thing happens if you play it out of a Triumph of Europa to get the +1 attack. It'll be a 1/1, but then it will copy itself and it goes back to being a 0/1. One trick that you can use to help avoid banking tabbies is to bank the card that you want to play and copy it with tabby instead. For example, say it's turn 2 and you want to play Cunning Scipion, but the only bankable card in your hand is a Tabula Rasa. Bank the Scipion instead and play Tabula to copy it. You still end the turn in the same place, but you've avoided banking your tabby. Another important note with Tabula Rasa: tabby gets played to board, then copies a unit from the bank. This means that she won't trigger a muster effect. So don't use Tabula Rasa to copy Wong, Centauris, Magna, or Gunslinger. Or do, but know that the muster isn't going to trigger. Pro tip: legendary cards like Convergent Domina can only have 1 copy in your deck, but they can be copied by Tabula Rasa more than once. Don't mulligan away your Magna basically ever. She is an amazing card, arguably the best and most useful single card in this deck. Pay attention to the board when you're holding Magna because her muster ability is a little bit tricky. She's a 3-cost, 3/2 unit, and her muster ability, remember, musters are triggered when they're played to the board, is choose 1. Deal damage equal to Magna's attack to target enemy unit, draw a card, deal 1 damage to the enemy. But the real magic is in her last line. If a friendly Cathari unit was destroyed on the enemy's last turn, do all 3 instead. When you're choosing, you're almost always going to choose to deal damage to an enemy unit. That's the highest value option that Magna has. However, there's no indicator on the card or in-game that this condition has been met, so you need to keep track of it yourself. Our small units are all Cathari except Gunslinger, but you won't lose a Cathari unit every single turn. Note, banish does not equal destroyed. There will be tricky spots on turns 3 and 4 where you'll need her muster damage, and we generally don't want to slow down when we're playing the Blue Blitz, so go for it if that's the case. When we're playing the Blue Blitz and we're going second, it's a little bit tougher. Now our opponent has the energy advantage and they get to attack first. That makes answering us much easier since we get buffed on attacks. However, they still need to answer our units ASAP or they will simply grow too large. Our mulligan choices also become much more matchup dependent. For example, against another Gnaeus, a Markolian player, or a Shroud player, we really want some early removal, meaning PS8s and mercenary gunslingers. Markolians love to lead with their Markolian Bannerman because he gets a +1/+1 buff anytime they play an effect, and they typically play a lot of effects. Their best open is going to be a turn 1 Bannerman, followed by a turn 2 Bannerman and PS8. This will allow them to remove our lead unit, usually the striker, and buff both of their Bannermans to a 2/3 unit. This is one of the few ways that another parallel can beat us early. The second early combo to watch out for comes from Shroud. They have a 1-drop called Singularity Steward. It's a 0/3 unit and it gets buffed +2/+1 when a unit gets banished. They also have a 1-cost effect called Life Siphon. It deals 2 damage and banishes the unit. So they could open with Steward, then on turn 2 play a second Steward and Life Siphon. If they're able to banish your turn 1 unit, then they now have 2 2/4 units and we're pretty much fucked. So in a spot like that, PS8 or no unit at all and playing nothing is often the correct play. Always PS8 a lead Bannerman when you're going second. Singularity Steward has no attack of its own, so if they lead with it, we can likely ignore it and try to remove it on turn 2 instead. In both spots though, some players will open with nothing if they only have the turn 2 part of the combo ready. This is not as difficult for us to deal with, but be aware it may be coming. Going second also means a longer game to win, but you do get a small card advantage. So be prepared to go a little bit longer and try not to leave yourself with just 1 card once you're in the mid game. And that brings us to the mid game, where Blue Blitz has some wicked combos that we'll look to deploy around turns 4 through 6. If the early game has gone well, you're going to be controlling the board at this point of the game, and usually you'll have a few units that have stuck. It's time to keep the pressure coming. Convergent Domina has the ability that friendly convergents have battle ready and must attack each turn. She is a convergent herself, so she is always battle ready. Battle ready means that she can attack the same turn that she has played. That means that she can remove an enemy unit or attack phase and get buffed by Gnaeus immediately. Even better, if she sticks and you have convergents that are in play on turn 5, they'll be battle ready too. Speaking of, Convergent Centaurus is a 4-cost 2/2 unit that spawns 2 more 1/1 convergents on muster, plus another 1/1 convergent anytime you bank a unit. If you have Valerusi Standard Bearer or Asian Subjugate down already, this becomes a huge tempo swing. On turn 5, you can play Centaurus before banking, meaning you'll get 4 units from just 1 card, and all of those units will get buffed or trigger a buff as well. When your Domina is on board already and you play Centaurus, you're going to get 3 or 4 more battle-ready units that'll get buffed from attacking as well. This will frequently lead to a concede when it happens, as they'll do at least 4 damage that turn, plus buff to threaten 7+ more damage on the next turn. Synchronicity is an awesome card, but it requires just a little bit of setup first. It's a 4-cost effect that allows you to play a copy of any non-Paragon unit on board. This can be your unit or theirs. Important to note, Synchronicity creates a copy of the unit in its current state, not its original. So for example, if you played Convergent Domina on turn 4, then it attacked and got a buff, it's now a 3/5. And when you copy it with Synchronicity on turn 5, you're going to play a copy that is 3/5 already. Gnaeus has buffs coming from all over the place. So sometimes you'll have a striker at say 6/5 or an Asian subjugate at 5/5, and you're going to want to play a copy of that instead. Many decks, including our own, will also play Wong. He's going to be a common copy target for your Synchronicity, as well as he's both a big body, provides buffs to our units, and has one of the best draw abilities in the entire game. And since we play a lot of small cards, our hands are often going to be light. Wong also helps you search for Triumph of Europa, our finishing card. Triumph of Europa, the star of the Blue Wave deck, is a 5-cost effect that wastes the next 2 cards in your deck, then lets you play any combination of 5 energy worth of units from your waste in any order you choose. Even better, the units played this way get +1/+0 as well. We run a lot of small units and a lot of units that will buff other units. And because Triumph pulls them to your hand first, then lets you play them from hand, all of your muster effects will trigger as well. 100% of our deck is 5 energy costs or less, so every single unit can potentially come back. Warning though, once they're played via Europa, then destroyed a second time, they are removed from the game entirely. This card also makes it much easier for us to combo our units together since they are collecting in our waste. It's common to play Valerusi Standard Bearer or Asian Subjugate at the start of your Triumph of Europa, or if you have enough energy from hand before you Triumph of Europa, to establish some buffs. If you already have one or more of them in play, you might not need to bring out another with your Triumph. Domina is another strong option as well. She uses 4 energy out of the 5, but she makes convergent units battle ready. If you have a convergent Princept in the waste already, it can come out with Domina, and together they provide 6 more immediate damage because it's battle ready. Pro tip, there's often going to be a lot of units in the waste and many different combinations to consider. Always check your hand, your bank, and your waste, and then decide what the best play is before you cast your Triumph of Europa. Europa is going to add 2 more cards to the waste for you to consider, but you know what's in your deck, so think about which cards you would like to get added to the waste and pay attention for those. Once you've cast Triumph of Europa, pay close attention to the timer. If it runs out, you just get nothing or nothing else. I've included the legendary Battle Pass card, Cerulean Hunter Kalair, in the Blue Blitz deck because it has a very useful Aftermath ability. Deal 16 damage to a target unit. An Aftermath ability is triggered when a unit is destroyed. Hunter Kalair is a 3-cost 1/1 unit, so it doesn't provide a whole lot of tempo when you play it directly to the board unless you kill it yourself right away to trigger its Aftermath ability. It's actually best when it gets mulled to the waste directly because playing it from the waste will also trigger its Aftermath ability. And Triumph of Europa is really the only way to do that. But 16 damage is going to kill just about anything in the game, and Earthen, Augencore, and Universal players can drop some really big units, while Marco, Shroud, and other Cathari players can buff their units to be equally huge. Against Nehemiah, for example, you really want to find your Cerulean Hunter Kalair right away, as they are looking to play a 7/7 unit on the board as early as turn 3, and Kalair is definitely our best option to remove it. And that wraps up my pilot guide for the Freeroll's Blue Blitz Gnaeus deck. I hope you found this fun and informative, and if you did, consider hitting that subscribe button below. I've also included links to my Twitter, how to download the game, my referral code so that you can get some free packs, and to the creator deck so that you can choose the Blue Blitz Gnaeus deck and start your parallel journey today.